2 reviews, 1 video. That is unprecedented, for no pun included. But when Space Cowboys came out with these 2 luscious hunks of boxes, we simply couldn't resist. And they're both Sherlock Holmes games, and that's exciting because unlike other public domain licenses, this one's not really been bled dry yet. However, they both cost doubloons, and it means that you probably are likely to only choose one of them. And that's why we're here, to help you decide whether you take the red pill or the blue.
Let's start with this one because it's excellent, and you probably already know that in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective you get to play wannabe mastermind sleuths that get on the dubious role of solving a case that Sherlock Holmes probably could have done in 5 minutes, but he's going to let you have a go as well. And when we say solving a case, we really do mean solving a case.
Honestly, Sherlock Holmes isn't much of a game. It's actually more like an activity, but a fun activity nonetheless. It's actually probably one of the most fun activities that come in a box this size. That and probably like a value pack of Pop-Tarts. Isn't it funny how they just burn in your mouth and taste like sugar dumpster? Dumpsterlicious.
Every master detective needs his master detectiving tools, and in this you get a map of Victorian London, so don't try and use it when you're lost on the tube because it will not come in helpful. There are 10 case books for you to solve, which means you can play it exactly 10 times until in 5 years' time, when you've forgotten everything and forgotten the solutions, you can come back and play it all over again. There are also newspapers to accompany all of these, and also a London directory to look up random people, and handily a rule book and an R2-D2 sock. Wait, that isn't supposed to be in there. I'm sorry, it doesn't come with that.
Each case starts with a murder mystery being delivered to our favourite sleuth that then somehow ends up in your hands, and off you go to London to solve it. You have a map of London with all the possible locations that you could go, and you have numbers associated with them. You have some extra numbers associated to people that you usually visit, such as the coroner, I can't say the word such, or some guy called Porky Shinwell. And finally, you have the London Directory, which is a bit like the Argos catalogue, or the Laminated Book of Dreams, as Bill Bailey calls it, of your usual suspects, informants, criminals, and other places of note. Again, all of them have a number. You will corroborate that number with a paragraph in the casebook, and if one exists, you'll read it out loud to everyone, and everyone then knows what's going on. And you might say to me, Efka, that sounds a bit like one of those choose-your-own-adventure things. No. Well, yes, it is, but no. The thing that makes Consulting Detective great, the thing that makes it work, the thing that makes it stand out from any other game is that it makes you feel like you are actually solving a case, and that is down to the quality of the writing in this game. Every location, or most locations you visit, feel special. The people you interview feel like they are real people, like they have their own little lives, dreams and peculiarities. And the newspapers are a brilliant addition to this game because, well, they're well written and they're as tasty and good looking as a bag of chips. And the mysteries themselves are so full and dense with information. Each lead that you visit could lead you nowhere at all, or it could have this tiny little detail hidden in the information that, if you manage to spot and follow up on, could actually lead to the solution of the case. And then finally, leads that are big shining red light bulbs that shout, "This is it! You have found the thing!"
And that's why Consulting Detective just works. Each case creates its own little world that you get to explore and make meaningful, positive changes in. And it seems that apart from Sherlock Holmes, you are the only one that can. And that's the other thing, you're not doing it on your own. You can play it with friends or family or loved ones. And in fact, you don't even have to play it at home. You just grab the London Directory, the map, the newspaper and the case and play it absolutely anywhere.
There are a few other rules to the game, like a scoring system and other guff, but trust us when we tell you, it really doesn't matter. This is literally a case of less is more. I said case because this case isn't this. Oh boy.
I'd really rather there was as little game as possible in Consulting Detective, because that's just not what it's about. It is about putting on your detective hat and being true to your sleuth self. And if you ever wanted to be a PI but without actually having to do real PI things like rifling through bins or falling asleep on a stakeout, and if you wanted to share in that experience, then go out and buy this game now.
Okay, let's put the brakes on the gushing just for a little smidge. You see, not everything is obviously perfect in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. First of all, there's something very timeless about this game, as in you will have events happen that you'll discover in the case booklet itself, and then you'll later want to reference those events as you visit other places, and you'll want to pry the information based on what already has happened, because everything is pre-written. You obviously can't do that. And then again, with the referencing, you'll want to find out certain things from certain locations that you think you should be able to discover, but you just won't be able to, because there's only a one-way communication with this game. The game talks at you, but the only other way you can talk back at it is simply by selecting which paragraph you are going to read. So there's something very horizontal about time in this game.
Time is a flat circle.
What do you mean time is a flat circle?
Everything we've ever done or will do, we will do over and over and over again, forever.
Actually, that's quite a good point.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detectives has seen many reprintings, and the original cases are still worth picking up. But this edition reprints 6 cases from the West End Adventures expansion, and also gives you 4 brand new cases to solve that form a campaign on their own. But trust me if I say that even if it was only these 6 adventures that were reprinted again, it's still worth picking up, because the titles on their own are just gold. The writing doesn't disappoint, and they are so well edited.
Which brings us to the Jack the Ripper campaign. Because we only had time to play the first case, we can't comment on the campaign as a whole. But it did introduce a rule which we can't tell you about because spoilers, that didn't feel particularly right, and actually felt like everything we did in this particular case left us feeling like it was all a bit meaningless. But a lot of that is due to the fact that, hey, these cases after all were unsolved, and a lot of them, not a lot of them, all of them are based on historical accounts, and the strength of the writing comes through that. Talking of writing, it is a little patchy in places, but that's not what's going to bother you. What's going to bother you is just how gruesome it all is, and it is, after all, dealing with murdering a lot of women, and the game never shies away from that. In fact, it is quite dark, for a lack of a better word. And to us, that was okay, because it was interesting to explore a game that does shine a light on just how incredibly unpunished crimes against women were in Victorian times, and we feel like there is an emphasis on that in the game. But if you are sensitive to that sort of material, I would say do not play these.
No matter how the rest of the Jack the Ripper cases play out, there is one thing for certain. Consulting Detective is worth your time and your money, and Watson and Holmes is not. Well, that's not quite true. Most of the things that we had to say about Consulting Detective are also true for Watson and Holmes. The mysteries are engaging, and it's really well written. You will go to different locations and pick up clues, and the production is just lovely, and there are nice little bits as well, like your locations come in an envelope, and this isn't the only time that this game has been printed. But there is one thing that really differentiates the two games, and that's where we think it misses the mark.
Just like before, you'll be visiting locations, discovering clues, and piecing together a murder mystery. But unlike before, all the locations in a particular case are laid out in the table in the form of face-down cards. Each player, one at a time, will select a location to go to, and then once they've chosen, they'll get to read it to themselves in silence. Well, why to themselves? Because Watson and Holmes is a competitive game. But what happens when multiple players want to go to the same location? They can't both pick it up and read it. Well, just for that particular occasion, Watson and Holmes introduces a bidding mechanism. Every time you go to a location, you have a choice of spending or not some carriage tokens, which represent your ability to pick up a cab in London. If you do, you've bid on that location, and anytime another player wanted to go there, they would have to spend a higher number of carriage tokens than you have, in which case you are bounced off from that location and your carriage tokens, all but one of them, are returned to you. And then when the turn comes back around to you, you can choose to, if you want to, continue the fight with your investigative nemesis in a bidding war of carriages, or simply choose to go somewhere else and discover what awaits for you there. Finally, once you have read a certain location, you always have a choice of spending a police token to cordon it off to prevent other players from being able to access it on further turns. Now, these can be taken off the board via call-off tokens, which make the police go away, but it removes the police token for everyone else. Or, if you have a very valuable lockpick token, you can spend it to go there and leave the police token intact.
Here's the problem. Solving a case against other players just isn't as much fun as solving it with them. Consulting a detective is filled with moments of eureka, I know the answer to the thing, and discussion and excitement. And Watson and Holmes is filled with reading in silence and writing in silence. And the only real discussion that you have with anyone amounts to, hey, I know a thing. Yeah, so do I. But we can't really talk about it. Okay, should we just carry on reading and writing in silence? Alright.
The engagement is supposed to come from these carriage tokens because you're trying to save them up and not spend too many, like a squirrel saves up nuts for the winter, just in case a bidding war breaks out and you have enough to spend to actually go where you want to go. And then you have the police token, which is another big decision that you make through the course of the game. Because what if you found the big clue? Well, you might want to cordon that off so the other players find it more difficult to actually get there. Or you might try to bluff that you found a big clue, spend your police token, and then the other players spend all the resources trying to get there, and then they fight each other, and eventually discover that all that's there is just empty tin cans and farts. But the entire bidding mechanism sadly didn't amount to much in our opinion. Here's the thing, there's also another location, 221B Baker Street, and you go to this special location only when you think you know the answers to the 3 questions that the case poses. You write down your answers secretly, then you read the answers and compare. If you've got everything correct, you are the winner of the game. However, if you got but one thing wrong, you are out. And you take on the role of Sherlock Holmes, which doles out clues to other players, which we actually think is a pretty nice touch.
What's happened in every game of Watson and Holmes that we've played is that nobody wants to go to 221B Baker Street until they think they have the right answer. So most people move about most locations and nobody wants to spend their carriage tokens till it really matters. And nobody wants to spend their police tokens because no one wants to be that guy. Because no one wants to make it worse for other players or enter bidding wars. Because that's not what's fun about solving these cases. The fun isn't trying to find out who the better detective is amongst your friend group. It's about being the detective.
So why this whole competitive thing and bidding mechanism? Well, whilst Watson and Holmes doesn't really state it anywhere, we think that it is very clearly a remake of another game called 221B Baker Street, which has been around for yonks. 221B Baker Street is a mass market game that had roll and move as a mechanism, which was about as much fun as a pile of dead flies, but otherwise was quite alright. So what the designers tried to do here, I think, is modernify the game by taking out what doesn't work, like roll and move, and bringing in something a bit more gamey, like bidding, which we think is a solution to a problem that we're not even sure exists. Because this game doesn't really need bidding when you're trying to solve cases. It just needs the cases. That's the fun part.
Because Watson and Holmes is competitive, it feels very self-contained. You play the game, you solve the cases, somebody wins, that's it, you go home. Whereas in Consulting Detective, once your brain has twisted itself up in knots that you just can't take it, you can go to bed and sleep on it and see if you can work out in the morning. And in that way, it feels a lot more immersive.
But don't get us wrong, Watson and Holmes is still a pretty alright game. The cases are well written and engaging, and the mysteries are always fun to solve. It's just that with these 2 boxes together out at the same time, if you only had to get one, we'd say take the red pill. It keeps it real.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the annual Rust Appreciation Society, where we drink John Smith's not any kind of American beer and crush the cans into little shapes and wear the worst clothes we can possibly find.
If you want more of that kind of content, where we reference Rust, or that other guy that's played by Woody Harrelson that wasn't quite as good in True Detective, or other obscure references, you should subscribe to our channel, and then you'll find more references. Except that maybe you won't, because it's just board game reviews. So there's no more Rust really. It's just board game reviews. But you should subscribe.